you will all perish as they did. Or those 18 who were killed when the Tower of Siloam fell on them, do you think that they were worse offenders than all the others living in Jerusalem? No, I tell you, but unless you repent, you will all perish, just as they did. Then he told them this parable. A man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came looking for fruit on it and found none. So he said to the gardener, "See here, for 3 years I have come looking for fruit on this fig tree, and still I find none. Cut it down. Why should it be wasting the soil?" And he replied, "Sir, let it alone for 1 more year until I dig around it and put manure on it. If it bears fruit next year, well and good. But if not, you can cut it down."
Spiders. Hey, last week we talked about chickens. This week it's spiders. A few years ago I went on a self-directed silent spiritual retreat. I went to a retreat center up close to Kansas City. They had a place where the cabins were out, separated from each other. I had a cabin. I had to take my own food, my own bedding, my own supplies, and I couldn't park very close, so I had to carry everything from my vehicle to the cabin. I was all set up to spend the week. When I checked in, they were very accommodating. They said, well, nobody else is really staying in the cabins, a few people in the main house. But since you're going to be having a silent retreat, when you come up, if you want to come for meals, you're welcome, or come to chapel. But if you come up to the main house, we know you're on a silent retreat, so nobody will talk to you. I thought, okay, that's fine. So I got all set up and had a great experience. I did a lot of sleeping, praying, meditating, journaling, walking in the woods and in the meadows. It was a good week. Now I know many of you are already thinking, wait just a minute. He can be quiet? Well, it was only 4 days. But it was a challenge. Yeah, I did it. No phone, no radio, no TV, no internet, no computer, nothing. Just me, cabin, books, not very many books, and quiet time. Connecting with God and nature. Early one morning, well, not too early, but early one morning I went down to the little pond, went down to the dock they had on the pond that went out the little pond not too far, and they had a chair there, nobody else around, took my coffee with me, went down, sat in the chair, and simply sat. It was quiet. A little breeze, beautiful sunshine, watching the water, watching the lake, listening to the birds, looking around, simply enjoying being. So I sat there sipping my coffee and taking everything in. I began to look around and notice things a little bit more closely, and notice the deck and how it was constructed, and noticed some birds in the trees, and looking around. And I looked up, and over in this corner where this beam came across and the place for the frame went down, I finally spotted it. A spider. The words from the Gospel of Luke today probably take on a little bit different tenor than they might have a week ago, or even a few days ago. Oh, if we would have heard before this past week about the ruthless ruler Pilate mixing blood from Galileans slain for some reason with sacrificial blood, we might have said, well, that's pretty offensive. And we would have heard the story about a wall fell, killing 18 people. We would have thought, well, that's terrible. But somehow, these incidents take on a little bit more weight and pain when we reflect upon them in light of another shooting, a little town in Heston, where Pat shared somebody he went to school with was one of the victims. 3 people killed, over a dozen injured. And suddenly, these words from Luke about Pilate committing atrocities and people being killed get a little bit closer to our own lives. Maybe we listen a little bit more carefully as this text was being read, saying, well, help us out here, God. What's going on? And we hear Jesus saying to the people who are coming to him and saying, well, isn't this horrible that Pilate committed this horrible atrocity when they were making sacrifices? And really probably coming with the common understanding that there must have been something rather bad about these Galileans, that they were treated in such a horrible way by Pilate. But Jesus doesn't go there. Jesus instead says, well, unless you repent, you too will perish. Were they any worse or any better than any of you, any of us? And what about the 18 people killed when the wall fell on them? Were they any worse than you? Repent, or you too shall perish. As we listen to Jesus, we're not hearing very many answers. We certainly don't hear any answers about why bad things happen to good people, nor why good things happen to bad people. We basically hear Jesus saying, hey, everybody's going to die, and stuff happens. But he seems to push it a little bit with this business about repent. Oh, repent. Here we go again. Now, we hear that word in church, in this church, a lot. Well, guess what? We're going to hear it again today, and we're going to hear it again and again and again. Who knows how many times we're going to talk about repent. It's a great word. But we're not quite sure what to do with it. And what does it have to do with bad things happening? Repent. Repent. Well, is repent just feeling, oh, I feel terrible for committing this terrible act. Please forgive me. Well, could be. Or is repent saying, well, God, I'm a terrible person, but I know Jesus has forgiven me. Well, could be. Maybe a little closer as some people say, well, repent really has the meaning to turn around, to go and do it a different way. Well, yeah, it could be. Or repent, that means turn toward God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. Well, yeah, that could be. Although, repent, at least as used by Jesus in this instance, may have more to do with the actual process of rethinking, reorienting, reimagining, reimaging, re-understanding what God and life are all about. We get a pretty good clue about how we might rethink this business about terrible things happening in our lives, in our world, as Jesus tells a little parable. He says, once upon a time,
landowner in the vineyard. In the middle of his vineyard, he planted a fig tree. Not only did he want grapes, he wanted some figs. He'd go by and look at this fig tree and see if there were any figs. And one day he went by and he said to the gardener, he said, "Hey, this fig tree, it's been growing for 3 years. And I come by all the time looking for fruit on it, nothing. It's using up space, it's using up ground, it's sucking oxygen undeservedly. It's a lousy tree. Cut it down, get rid of it." The gardener says, "Well, sir, let me take care of it. Let me nurture it. Let me dig up around it and put some manure on it. You know, all that stuff that happens in life, we'll put some manure on it. And next year, let's check it out. And if there's no fruit then, then maybe we'll cut it down." The gardener says, "Give it some time. Be patient. Wait. Practice forbearance." Well, those are words we do not want to hear, nor do we like, especially when bad stuff is happening. Come on, God, we're a little bit tired of this. Too many people are getting sick. I've heard you in this congregation say, how many more people can get cancer? Too many people are hurting. Too many people are being injured, not only in violent acts of shooting, but people are speaking inappropriately. Two people can't talk to each other, or people are talking about somebody else behind their back. All sorts of stuff bad going on. We say, come on, God, fix it. And all we get is wait, be patient, trust God, repent. Maybe the process of repenting is the process of learning to wait, practice forbearance, and suspend judgment. Slow down with me for just a minute. Let's just take a pause and think carefully about the terrible things of which we're aware. But let's think about all these horrible things in perspective. Honestly, is there any atrocity that we have not seen, experienced, heard about, studied, or read about that could be any worse than what humanity has already gone through? Murder, mayhem, ethnic cleansing, slave trade, abusing people, emotional abuse, physical abuse, drawing and quartering, hanging people, burning people at the stake, atomic bomb detonations, firebombing cities into oblivion, shooting, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, meteorite strikes, volcanoes, the Black Plague, influenza pandemic, HIV/AIDS, Ebola, cancer. These are the horror of the horrible. Of what are we so frightened? Hopefully not God. Clearly in these verses, Jesus says, by neglecting to say, oh yeah, God's out to get people. God's out to destroy people. Jesus clearly omits saying God is a God of destruction, and instead tells a little story about forbearance for a fig tree. Maybe we haven't given God long enough. Oh, goody. But that may be what repenting is about. It's changing the way we think from instantly fixing everything to saying, hey, love takes time. But in the end, love will out. I saw the spider. It wasn't very big. About like this. I mean, it wasn't little, but it wasn't one of those huge spiders. And if I hadn't been able to see the sun shining exactly and see the intricately woven web, I would have thought it was suspended in thin air. But I saw the spider right in the middle of the web it had spun. And I decided I'm on a retreat. I'm being silent. I'm being quiet. I'm trying to connect. So I'm going to focus on this spider for a while. And I watched it. I just watched it. Now, I've read recently that most adults now have the attention span a little bit less than a goldfish. And I think mine is a little shorter than that. So it was a real challenge for me to watch that spider, but I did it. I don't know how long I watched. But as long as I watched, that spider never moved. I began to think, I wonder if it's dead. I mean, it wasn't moving. Nothing. And then I thought, well, good grief, John. Look at that spider. Part of God's creation. And it's just there. It was waiting. It was practicing forbearance. And I knew as soon as something hit that web and it felt the vibration, it's going to go scooting over and take that nutrition. A few bugs came around, nothing. I thought, how in the world can that spider just wait? And then the sun began to shine a little bit brighter, and I thought, now it's going to move. Nope. It just stayed right there. Well, I finally gave up and got distracted by something and looked out across the water and looked around. But I sat there for quite a little while, a couple of hours. That spider never moved. What patience. I compare that to myself. trust in God's love. And I say, God, why haven't you fixed this already? And that spider's just sitting there, waiting. Well, I went back to my cabin, hung around a while, rested, read a little bit. A little bit later, I went back down to the dock, and down there and looked. It was still there. Well, later that evening, I went out walking. Later that evening, I went down, and it was getting ready to get dark, and I looked up. It was gone, but the web was still there. I don't know if it ever got anything to eat or not, but that spider made me think. Now, trust me, I've forgotten 7 billion times since then, but that spider made me think, John, you need to practice patience. Perhaps repenting is a process of understanding that God is a God of faith, vulnerability, life, and love. And that God is a forbearing God. Casting a web of love. Then waiting